Hi, welcome back. Now, what I want to talk about today is, well, it's basically shenanigans. I'm sure there's a point in every D&D party's life when they get together and that they decide to just get really, really drunk or party to an extreme. And inevitably, that happens at least once or twice a campaign that the party just get out of control and they just go on their little tangent for a while. Usually during like the equivalent of a shopping episode or similar. But I always find that if you give them like outrageous consequences for doing so, that it makes the whole more experience much more memorable. And there is well, I wouldn't say a wonderful film, an amusing film from a few years back called Dude, Where's My Car? About two guys that get really, really stoned, wake up the next day, the car's missing, and then it involves like sexy aliens and everything. That sort of thing. So what I've created is an example table of the sort of consequences the parties could have for partying way too hard the night before, and it should give them something memorable. Now, again, I'm doing like random tables, and this is because I feel that a little bit of prep goes a long way. If they get really drunk and you try and make up something, well, it's like almost everything in D&D. If you try and make it up on the go, yeah, it could be good. But with just a little bit of forethought beforehand, you're given a prompt and you can go from there. It's the same as if you're writing a short story or something. If you're given a prompt to start off with, to frame your narrative around, it all becomes so much more easier to tell. Okay, so we are not going into first person mode, we are going into digital first person mode, and I'll show you what we've got. All right, let's get cracking. Okay, so here's the table I've built. So D10 carousing consequences. Really straightforward, just 10 like scenarios that can come out of this. We'll look at each one of them in more detail. Let's get stuck in. So number one or more of the party members got married, potentially and ideally to one another. I think for this one, to give them a semblance of agency, even though they don't really have in this case because they got this drunk in the first place, by all means get everybody to make a wisdom check. Make them even do it with disadvantage. And the ones that fail the worst, those are the two that get married to each other. I don't think you necessarily need to choose who gets married to who. I think let fate decide it. Because what it often does is it shows there's like really interesting party dynamics at play that you didn't realise were there. Particularly if you put two party members that don't necessarily always interact with each other. And if you can, try and involve the characters' friends and families. I'll go through the example we did in a bit. I think by all means allow an annulment. We don't want to just say, right, that's it, you're married now forever. But make them work for it. So if the priest will say, oh well, that's really against our religion, but a sizable donation, or maybe you could clean our catacombs out of undead or something similar, something like that. So they've got to work for it. So when I did this, we had two party members. They got very drunk, ended up marrying each other, of course. And one of them came from an incredibly wealthy family, and the other one was basically a power-hungry wizard. When the father, who's only interested about his son's success, when he finds him, he's first of all disappointed in his son, but becomes quite impressed by it was a snake lady. Quite impressed by the snake lady that he married because she had that wherewithal about her. Anyway, they got annulled. Okay, number two. So, two or more of the drinkers find themselves awake riding a dead great white shark who's wearing a party hat. And inside of the shark, there's just chock full of drugs. Now, it doesn't have to be a shark. I think whatever it's got to be a big animal, preferably endangered, so it's more offensive, and it's got to be really, really conspicuous. So, like, it doesn't have to be drugs inside the shark, but whatever it is, it's got to be highly, highly illegal. The party should realise that straight away they've got themselves in a bit of deep doo-doo. They could try and sell it. Oh, it depends on the party, doesn't it? Instead of making the owners identity a secret. It should be like, particularly if it's a criminal enterprise, it'd be like an open secret. It's like, well, it's this guy, but nobody ever does anything about it because they're too scared of them. So whoever it is should be powerful, should be influential, and should be able to summon armies of criminals to come and attack the party as they want. So you want this encounter to be not about them fighting criminals, but realizing they've got themselves in way too deep, and that what they should do is seeking a diplomatic solution or similar. Okay, things got out of hand. People drank way too much and began to vomit, and then for some reason, a vomit golem was created. The vomit golem. So if you just imagine all these people, they're just drinking and drinking, and then they start vomiting and vomiting. And then summoned from this great big pile of vomit is this monstrosity. It's a golem, so it's got to be tough. And I think it should probably have special abilities, so like fires blasts of acid at people, like melt people. Vomits, it's going to stink, so maybe there's like they're attacking it directly or being within a certain distance of it affects certain skills and abilities unless you pass a roll. And maybe because it is liquid, it could just engulf people and try and drown them in vomit. So whatever created it, maybe they just vomited so hard they bent reality and created this by sheer power of magical will. Or maybe somehow this vomit leaked into an alchemist lab. It doesn't really matter too much. And it could be as big as you want. Maybe if it's a small one or lots of tiny ones running around the city, or maybe one Godzilla big. And they're like, oh, well, how are we going to deal with that? Now, obviously, it's got to be weak to antacids, so maybe the way to defeat this would be to mine a local clay quarry and just fire lumps of clay as it, which neutralizes all the acid in the golem. So maybe something on this like that. Something quite disgusting. One more of the drinkers waits next to a mythical beast, and they've graffitied it. This mythical beast has got to be large, it's got to be scary, and it's got to be something where the party members wake up, they're like, oh my god, what have we gotten ourselves into? Could be a bear, griffin, dragon, wyvern, or anything else that's terrifying. Whatever it is, they've got to realise that the situation they got themselves in is bad, and they've done something to the beast, obviously going to enrage it. So let's say it's a bear. They've shaved off all of the bear's hair while it's slumbering, and now they've put it in sacks and they're using it as pillows. Or maybe they've drawn angry eyebrows on a dragon, or they've plucked a griffin in its sleep, or something like that. So maybe it'll look something a bit like this dog here. So the dragon's got angry eyebrows drawn on it, and it looks ridiculous. And when it finds out, it's going to lay waste to everything. Okay, number 5. The party awake in the desert. In front of them is an exotic palace. And it turns out they're inside of a jinn's lamp. But of course, the jinn is stuck in the lamp, and so are they. However they got there, well, that's for you to work out. But to get out, you've got to defeat the spell holding the jinn in. But because everything should be anthropomorphized in this world. So the spell is not just a spell, it appears as a creature or a monster or something. The world should be large enough, maybe like the size of a town, maybe a bit larger, but it's got clear boundaries inside of it, typical sort of like desert location. The jinn's obviously thrilled because by himself, he can't defeat the locking spell, so he's got a chance to get out now. But of course, it's a jinn. And jinn, if you know your D&D lore, kind of view everybody else as kind of inferior. So it's a question whether he can actually be trusted or not. He might be very trustable. He might just be super thankful that the party are here to help them get out. So he's going to lavish them with food and gifts and stuff, but make it abundantly clear they've got to get out. So the locking spell should be a powerful creature. Maybe something like a giant sandworm or some sort of magical ghoul living in a cave somewhere. Whatever it is, it should be designed to counter a jinn. So it's got maybe anti-magic abilities. So the best way to probably beat it would be to just hit it really hard in the face. And I think because it is 2 or 3 sessions worth, chances are, the party should earn maybe a magical item from the jinn, or get it from the corpse of the locking spell on the way out. Okay, right, just over halfway through. One or more of the drinkers will have developed telekinetic powers. However, they have a mild headache, and if they ever get drunk again, they lose the power. So it's basically a trade-off. So they've got this power, but they're always they can't get drunk again. If you're stuck on what power to give them, so it's telekinetic, just give them a mage hand, telekinetic mage hand, or create your own random table. If you're looking for inspiration, Dark Sun, so that's the old D&D setting that may or may not be coming back. Everybody in that got like a psionic talent, which was a very slight and occasionally useful psionic ability. Okay, the party waits in a supermax prison. They either did something awful last night or they've been stitched up. They can break out of the prison much as they want. Obviously, we're going to have all the tropes there. The warden is corrupt, the guards are sadistic, and the other prisoners are probably very predatory in themselves. So everybody's making themselves prison shanks and all kinds of stuff. This is probably a really good way to introduce like how evil the big bad is. Particularly if he's framed the party, bribed the right person to get them in, put in a little bit more lore. So there you go. There's some prison shanks. That's what you need. Right, okay, so last night somebody found a book written in blood, bound in human skin, and they read a passage from it. Essentially, somebody's read from the Necronomicon or something like that, and the consequences for this are going to be extraordinarily bad. So maybe they've summoned a demon. Maybe they've animated every corpse within like the country, and now undead are rampaging through the countryside, or they've opened a gateway to hell, or something equally as bad. Whatever it is, consequences are really bad, and they're going to have to deal with this for some time. Okay, number 9. So, they awake probably just in time for their initiation ceremony. And remember, there's going to be 2 types of cults generally. There's the nice kind, which is just, they do chanting, get together and do weird sex stuff. There's also the dangerous kind of cult, where they wear robes, do weird sex stuff, and indulge in human sacrifice, all that kind. So hopefully for them, it should be the former rather than the latter. And obviously the cult is going to be very sad if the party realise what they got themselves into and try and back out of it. So if they do go through with it, give them something to remember what they've done, like a tattoo or a brand or something similar. Okay, and finally, they wake up, everything's fine, maybe got a hangover, and they walk outside and every city guard is waiting out there with mops and buckets and lots of very other sad looking people because essentially they got so drunk last night, there's a giant party and it tears through the city like a riot. And obviously the authorities are furious and they know the party are the ringleaders. So they've got 2 choices. They can either clean up their mess or they can get jailed or exiled or similar. That's what I think is a good table for like the consequences for carousing too hard. It is, I think it's good fun to have something like this prepared because at least once or twice a campaign, parties tend to like drink that, party that hard where it does demand that some consequences occur. Okay? Right, thank you very much.